just they were just angry at Chinese who took the jobs, black people who took the jobs. Even if you go back to Nixon, he admitted really that that was more a fight against people who had a culture that he didn't like rather than the drug itself.
You find that prohibitions do in some way dovetail to prejudice. So, we can use the Harrison Act, for example. That was there. When we researched that, we know that it's there to segregate what a white middle class America was like, as opposed to the ethnic tide that was starting to come in. And it's the same with if you read Johann Hari's Chasing the Scream, he makes a brilliant job of describing what it's like with Billie Holiday and the jazz movement, and how the jazz movement was very much involved with cannabis and marijuana, and that was against the sensibilities to the people at the time, Harry Anslinger and that kind of group. And each time that you do have a drug prohibition, it tends to in some way relate to a social persecution, and it still carries on now with the disparity in crack cocaine and powder cocaine. It's still there. Obama did a fair job to equalise it, but not enough. It's still, if you're going under the premise that we do have penalties for drugs, which of course neither one of us agrees with, then surely it makes sense to have a drug which has got relatively equal harm to be of equal punishment. But it's not. Crack cocaine is still punishable. I think it's 3-1. I might be wrong on that, but it's still far more than what powder cocaine is.
I had an experience because there have been some so-called scandals here in Norway where politicians got caught with some marijuana, and their career is destroyed. Why another government official who was buying prostitutes was okay. What do you find about that? Because that's to me even more absurd. Just using cannabis is enough to destroy a career here in Norway.
And that's where it's completely wrong. If you look at that someone is using a substance, and then you prosecute them and they lose their job, of course their life's going to spiral even further down. So you're not in any way helping them. If you go under the premise that you're arresting someone for the good of their own health, then you've just completely exacerbated the circle that they're going to be in. And there is a really big crossover between sex worker rights and drug user rights. We get a lot within Elite. We get a lot of people from the sex worker community coming our way saying, well, there's still harm reduction practices you can do in it. There's still education that dovetails. And it's obviously within Elite with single issues, so we can't necessarily touch it, but we can certainly be sensitive to it as well, because a lot of times we find as well that sex workers do use drugs, not all the time, obviously. So there's a big conversation there in general. And if you use the word vice, which, again, I don't like to use the word vice, but if we're going to broadly label this, it all comes under the same bracket of people's civil liberties. Do we really want to affect people's job prospects and their lives in general by ruining them through prosecutions? Of course we don't. It doesn't work. And we haven't had much in the way of drug scandals in this country lately, even though the fact that there was I think it was The Sun again, which is the news publication I said about earlier. They did a swab test throughout the Houses of Parliament toilets, and they found such traces of cocaine. It goes without saying that there are very much people within the halls of power that are using substances that aren't necessarily legal.
They did the same in Norway, so they found many same results.
And yet we can't have a conversation about it. The people that make the laws, we know that they've got friends and family that have got addictions or or don't have addictions and use safely and ethically, or however you want to term it. But we still can't have the conversation of not letting them be criminals. And I think the reason we don't have that conversation is because they're the ones that don't tend to get caught. It's very much the ones at the lower socio-economic classes that are the ones that go through the mill with regards to prosecution. The ones that are in the upper echelons of society can pretty much get away with what they want.
I think it's interesting because if a politician, and we had two of the politicians who said they were for it in Norway, was caught afterward. The police started investigating them. That was very interesting. But it's one thing more, because I remember when Bill Clinton resigned from office. 2 weeks later he said, yeah, I'm for legalization of cannabis. I think maybe Obama gonna do exactly the same thing. But why do they have to wait? Why do they have to wait after they come out of office? That is most absurd. People cannot even, politicians don't dare to do so. It's for me so incredible, insane.
It is difficult because, I mean, on one side, I completely agree with that it is so frustrating to just put your colours to the mast. It's really not that big a deal. And I think most people just would not care. If a leader came out and said, right, we need to do this, I think most people go, okay, I'm with that. I think there's not enough support to keep prohibition in place, and I think there's a lot of support to end it. Now, I think one of the reasons that we don't have politicians and people of power coming out while they're in there is the political system itself, because a lot of times you find that our leaders are not necessarily there having a free voice. You know, they're beholden to their party, to the whips. Well, obviously they set the whips mandate, but the whips are very much integral to what goes on. And I think that there's, because of the consensus and because of the party fundings that happen as well, I think it's such a tightrope of how they have to walk that you see that the rhetoric starts to change in the way that they're softer towards it. Like Obama, even though he hasn't come out and said, right, we need to legalise cannabis, which he pretty much did promise before he was in office, and then it went soft on it. I think that he has made the fact that he hasn't blocked state-by-state reforms, the fact that there is a conversation about reclassification, so that it's not Schedule 1. And I think if he leaves office, I think that might be what he would do. I think it might be reclassified so it's not on a schedule with heroin in Class 1.
Yeah, but he has used under Obama administration, he has also stopped a lot of dispensary for medical marijuana.
That's true.
His predecessor, really.
Yeah, that is true. The legacy of the raids and things like that have not been good, especially in the early part of his term. And it is frustrating. I know a lot of people in America that do follow Obama's work religiously because that's their job. They're there to be a sentinel within marijuana policy. And I know they get frustrated. I know that they know Obama's position is very much different from his public one.
That is, yeah, I'm still a little bit frustrated over that. But really, we have some experience here with new drug policy in Europe. I see, for me, Portugal is one of the best. Switzerland, another, really, who's really working. Especially when it comes to heroin and harder drugs, Portugal and Switzerland have been a success story.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the science says it all? Because I try to, because the thing I get met here in Norway is like, yeah, but we have a different culture in Norway. Yeah, more people drive drugs in Norway than anywhere else in Europe. Why don't people say, like, Portugal, yeah, that works. Switzerland, yeah, that works. Why doesn't they copy it?
I think we're the same in this country as well, in the UK, where I think we're so engineered towards having a success or a failure based on the numerical position of usage. I think that if your usage starts to dip on drugs, then it's like, oh, finally we got success because more people aren't taking drugs. And that's just perverse because, as you said, we've got a terrible death rate in this country for drug users. It's gone up. I think we're at an all-time high now. My chairman, Neil Woods, who is an undercover drugs detective, this is where he would be a good one to speak to because he's passionate about this area. And I think that once we got this perversion in our mind that the only way to measure a successful drug policy is through the dip of use, it's a very bad road to go down. And as you said, when you look at even Sweden that's got a very harsh drug policy to the point where in this country the laws are on possession. So if you're caught in possession, that's when you could go through through prosecution. Whereas in Sweden, you can have it in your system. You know, if it's detectable within your urine or blood, then you can be prosecuted.
Yeah.
So it's
just asking that because some people in this country said that Sweden is a success story. What's your comment to that?
Again, just look at their death rates. The death rates are, I think, on a par or worse with us. I did check them the other day, actually. There's a great blog from Transform Drug Policy Foundation. I'll try and quickly find a link to it so that I can speak about it. But they're frustrated on this issue, that the fact that people do use Sweden as a successful model. And you have to then weigh up what that means. Well, if you want a complete erosion of civil liberties, then it's a success. If you want a complete overhaul of how we perceive harm, then it's a success because, like I said, it's driving death rates up. I don't personally think that's a success, and I don't think that many people in a country, which, even though the UK is quite conservative, we still are liberal-leaning. And if it gets to the point where we're having drug policy, which means that the drugs in your system allows the state to invade your life and prosecute you, I don't think this country would stand for that. I think that's when we would go, hang on a minute, things have gone a little bit awry. So the worse it gets, the almost stronger reform gets, if that makes sense.
In Norway, the scandals often are found by high schools. They go after students, musical festivals, and so on, with search dog and everything. And they make big headlines every week that they found some drugs in the festival, and they stopped people, and so on, and so on, and so on. They have of them. They make contracts with young people, like if you keep on just admit that you have a problem, and you go to therapy, and everything. It's like admitting you have a problem when you don't necessarily have one.
Yeah, and
this
I
is
just
starting in Norway now. That's obviously this is basically very hard against civil liberties.
Exactly.
And Norway is very to the left. So how can you explain that?
And I've just found, so if people want to see that Sweden report, just Google drug policy in Sweden, a repressive approach that increases harm. And that's the Transform Drug Policy Foundation that does a very good analysis of it. And as you said, you do have to weigh up civil liberties to freedom and also the harms that come within that. And there is a broad conversation within that. But if you could compare Sweden to even Ireland now, Ireland are progressing really well. Our neighbours, they're probably going for a decriminalisation across the board. They're talking about supervised injecting sites. There's talk of medicinal cannabis and potential further cannabis reforms. And it's quite strange. You'd imagine the UK to be in that position before Ireland. And the fact that Ireland are going before us indicates that we really are behind in the UK now. And fair play to Ireland. I really hope they go ahead with it, because I think it would be very useful to them.
But how does the public see this? Because I know you have a Liberal Party. Where's the Liberal Party of Britain in this? Because, well, Liberal Party, this should be their agenda.
We had the coalition government in 2010, which was fronted by, as I said, the Conservatives and the Liberals. Unfortunately, after that, because of some of the decisions that took place in there, the Liberal Party got wiped out in the 2015 election. So we've only got, I think it's 8 now, and it was something like 58 before that. So they lost around 50 MPs.
Oh shit!
Yeah, so they really took hammering, and it was and now retrospectively, people are looking back and thinking actually that was quite unfair, because the Liberal Party, a lot of people have got quite a nostalgic view on them now, because they realised that they were there to temper the hard right that was coming through. But they've still been really good. They've been really active on drug policy. They've seen that there's not a niche there for a political party in drug policy reform, because they've been championing the issue for a long time. But there certainly is vote winning in championing drug policy. And you could argue that that's what happened in Canada with the Liberals and the new Prime Minister there now, that's making some pretty massive legalisation in quotation marks. I think we're going to get there, and the Liberal Democrats in this country again put out a report, or they basically manifestoed the issue of drug policy reform, especially cannabis. They've really nailed their colours now. They've gone, right, we're championing this issue, this is ours. And it's only really the Liberal Democrats and the Green Party that are doing that. The rest of our political parties are still wishy-washy, don't know how to decide it. There's chance, and there's ways that we can help bring the change around within the parties, but the Liberal
Labour Party, people for the low middle class people, working class people, not even them.
You'd expect it, wouldn't you? You really would think that they would understand what the socio-economic issues are in drug policy. And the new leader that we got, which is Jeremy Corbyn, who's a contentious figure, some people love him, people hate him. Really did. Before he was in office, he completely got it. He's on record International Drug Policy Consortium, IDP. He did a speech with them. I think it was about 2009. I might be wrong, but he completely gets it. He understood decriminalisation. He understood the need for it, But unfortunately, it's that same thing again, that once he's in office,